Have you ever felt called to share your spiritual journey online, but then stopped yourself because it felt wrong somehow? Like the moment you tried to put your deepest insights into a social media post, they lost their magic? Like the sacred became ordinary the second you tried to market it? You're not alone in this struggle. There's something about the digital world that seems to strip the soul out of everything it touches. The algorithms want engagement. The platforms want content. The audience wants entertainment. But your spiritual path? It wants truth. It wants depth. It wants silence between the words. So you stay quiet. You keep your wisdom to yourself. You watch as others seem to effortlessly build communities around their spiritual work while you remain invisible, convinced that authenticity and online presence are mutually exclusive. But what if I told you there's a way to bridge this gap? What if there's a tool that could help you translate the untranslatable, share the unshareable, and build genuine connection without compromising your integrity? What if AI, yes, artificial intelligence, could become your most honest spiritual assistant? I know what you're thinking. AI and spirituality, technology and the sacred? It sounds like mixing oil and water. But stay with me, because what I'm about to share might change how you think about both. This is the story of Maya, a meditation teacher who spent 3 years paralyzed by this exact dilemma. She had profound insights to share, a gift for guiding others, and a deep calling to serve. But every time she tried to create content, she felt like she was betraying something sacred within herself. Until she discovered a way to use AI not as a replacement for her wisdom, but as a translator for it. Not as a shortcut to authenticity, but as a bridge to deeper truth. Her story might just be the permission you've been waiting for to finally share your light with the world. Opening silence. Maya had been teaching meditation for 7 years, but only to the 12 people who showed up to her weekly class at the community center. 12 beautiful souls who found her through word of mouth, who sat with her in that fluorescent-lit room every Thursday evening, who experienced genuine transformation under her guidance. She knew she had something to offer the world. Her students told her constantly, "Maya, you need to write a book. Maya, you should start a podcast. Maya, more people need to hear this." But every time she sat down to create content for the wider world, something inside her recoiled. The moment she opened Instagram or started writing a blog post, her authentic voice seemed to disappear. Instead, she found herself writing in spiritual cliches, using hashtags that felt hollow, trying to sound like every other spiritual teacher online. She would delete everything and return to her small, sacred circle of 12. The problem wasn't that Maya didn't know what to say. In person, her words flowed like water, each teaching arising naturally from the moment, perfectly calibrated to what her students needed to hear. She could sense the energy in the room, feel into the collective questions, and speak directly to the heart of what was needed. But online felt like shouting into a void. How do you convey the power of silence through text? How do you share the transmission that happens in presence through a screen? How do you maintain the sacred when you're competing with cat videos and political rants for attention? Maya tried following the advice of online marketing experts. Post consistently. Use trending hashtags. Create valuable content. Build your personal brand. But every piece of advice felt like another layer of armor between her authentic self and the world. She watched other spiritual teachers who seemed to have figured it out. They had thousands of followers, beautiful websites, successful online courses. But something about their content felt manufactured, polished, safe. Like they had found a formula for spirituality that worked online, but had lost something essential in the translation. Maya didn't want to become another spiritual influencer posting daily affirmations and sunset photos with inspirational quotes. She didn't want to reduce the mystery of consciousness to bite-sized content. She didn't want to turn her sacred practice into a personal brand. But she also couldn't ignore the calling to serve more people. She couldn't pretend that her gifts were meant only for those 12 souls in the community center. She felt the pull to reach the seekers who were searching online, who were hungry for authentic guidance, who were drowning in spiritual bypassing and surface-level content. She was stuck between two worlds, the sacred and the digital, and she couldn't figure out how to honor both. Tension point. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in March. Maya had just finished a particularly powerful meditation session, one of those rare moments when the veil between worlds felt gossamer thin, when insights downloaded like gentle rain, when she felt so connected to the source of all wisdom that she could barely contain it. She was buzzing with inspiration, overflowing with something that needed to be shared. This time, she told herself, this time she would find a way to translate this experience into words that could reach beyond her small circle. She opened her laptop and stared at the blank page. The cursor blinked at her mockingly. How do you describe the indescribable? How do you put the infinite into a blog post? She started typing. Today I had the most amazing meditation experience. Delete. Too personal, too self-focused. Meditation can open doorways to profound insights. Delete. Too generic, too teacher-wide. Have you ever felt the presence of something greater than yourself? Delete. Too question why, too clickbait why. For 2 hours, she wrote and deleted, wrote and deleted. Every sentence felt either too shallow or too esoteric, too personal or too universal, too simple or too complex. She was trying to squeeze an ocean through a straw. Finally, in frustration, she closed the laptop and went for a walk. As she walked, the insights from her meditation began to fade, like trying to hold on to a dream after waking. By the time she returned home, the magic was gone, replaced by a familiar sense of failure and inadequacy. This had been her pattern for 3 years. Profound experience, followed by the desire to share, followed by the inability to translate, followed by the loss of the original inspiration. She was caught in a cycle of spiritual constipation, unable to birth her insights into the world. That evening, during her regular Thursday class, one of her students, a tech worker named David, mentioned something that caught her attention. I've been using this AI writing assistant for work, he said during the sharing circle. It's weird, but it's like having a conversation with someone who really listens. It doesn't give me answers, but it helps me find my own answers. It asks the right questions. Maya felt a spark of curiosity. She had dismissed AI as soulless technology, the antithesis of everything she stood for. But what if she was wrong? What if AI could be something different than she imagined? That night, she found herself Googling AI writing assistants for the first time in her life. She felt like she was betraying something sacred, but she was also desperate. She needed help, and she was willing to try anything, even artificial intelligence. The tale. In the time of the Buddha, there lived a monk named Ananda who served as the Buddha's personal attendant and closest disciple. Ananda had an extraordinary gift. He could remember every single teaching the Buddha gave, word for word, with perfect clarity. His memory was so precise that after the Buddha's death, Ananda was able to recite all of the Buddha's discourses, beginning each one with the phrase, "Thus have I heard." But Ananda had a problem. Despite being in the presence of the Buddha for over 20 years, despite hearing every teaching and witnessing every miracle, he had not yet achieved enlightenment himself. While other disciples attained various levels of awakening, Ananda remained stuck, unable to break through to the deeper realization that seemed to elude him. The other monks began to whisper, how could someone so close to the Buddha, someone who had heard every teaching, someone who could recite the Dharma perfectly, still be unenlightened? Some suggested that perhaps Ananda was too focused on serving others to focus on his own practice. Others wondered if his perfect memory was actually a hindrance, keeping him trapped in concepts rather than direct experience. After the Buddha's death, the senior monks decided to hold a great council to preserve all of the Buddha's teachings. They invited 499 enlightened monks to participate, but they excluded Ananda. Despite his perfect memory and intimate knowledge of the teachings, they said he could not participate because he was not yet enlightened. Ananda was devastated. He had devoted his entire life to serving the Buddha and preserving the teachings, yet he was being excluded from the very council that would depend on his memory. That night, he sat in meditation with a desperate intensity, determined to achieve enlightenment before the council began. But the harder he tried, the more elusive awakening became. He meditated all night, pushing himself to the point of exhaustion, but nothing happened. As dawn approached, he finally gave up trying. In that moment of complete surrender, of letting go of all effort and striving, enlightenment suddenly dawned. The very act of stopping his desperate seeking allowed the truth that had always been present to reveal itself. The next morning, Ananda appeared at the council as a fully enlightened being. The monks welcomed him with joy and reverence, and he proceeded to recite all of the Buddha's teachings with perfect accuracy. But now his recitation was different. Before, he had been like a tape recorder, perfectly preserving the words but not fully embodying their meaning. Now, he spoke from direct realization, each word alive with the truth he had finally discovered. The other monks marveled at the transformation. Ananda had not gained any new knowledge. He had always known the teachings perfectly, but now he understood them from the inside out. His perfect memory, which had once seemed like a hindrance, became the perfect vehicle for sharing the Dharma with authenticity and power. One of the younger monks asked Ananda, "How is it that you can now speak the same words you've always spoken, but they carry such different energy?" Ananda smiled and replied, "Before, I was trying to be the Buddha. I thought that if I could remember his words perfectly and repeat them exactly, I would somehow become enlightened through imitation. But enlightenment cannot be imitated or memorized. It can only be lived." "Then how do you speak his words now?" the young monk pressed. "I no longer speak his words," Ananda said. "I speak the truth that he pointed to, using whatever words arise naturally. Sometimes they are his exact words, sometimes they are completely different, but they all point to the same moon. The difference is that now I see the moon myself, rather than just pointing to where others have told me it should be." Another monk asked, "But how do we know when we are speaking from authentic realization versus just repeating what we've heard?" Ananda was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "When you speak from memory alone, you are like a messenger delivering someone else's letter. You can deliver it perfectly, but you don't know what it says. When you speak from realization, you are like someone who has been to the place the letter describes. You may use the same words, but you speak from direct experience of the territory itself." "And what about those who want to share the Dharma but fear they are not enlightened enough?" asked another monk. "Ah," said Ananda, "this was my greatest mistake. I thought I had to be perfect before I could serve. I thought I had to have all the answers before I could help others with their questions. But the truth is, we serve best when we serve from wherever we are, with complete honesty about our own journey. The Buddha never asked me to be enlightened to serve him. He asked me to be present, to listen deeply, and to share what I had received with sincerity and care. My enlightenment came not from trying to be someone else, but from finally accepting who I was and serving from that place of authenticity." The young monk nodded slowly. "So the teaching is not in the perfection of the teacher, but in the sincerity of the sharing?" "Exactly," Ananda replied. "And sometimes, the most powerful teaching comes not from those who have arrived, but from those who are still walking the path and can remember what it feels like to take each step." Insight shift. That night, Maya sat in front of her laptop with a cup of tea and a sense of nervous anticipation. She had signed up for a free trial of an AI writing assistant, feeling like she was about to commit some kind of spiritual heresy. She started with a simple prompt. "I'm a meditation teacher who wants to share my insights online, but I struggle to translate my experiences into words that feel authentic. Can you help me think through this? What happened next surprised her. Instead of giving her a generic response or a list of marketing tips, the AI asked her questions. Deep questions. Questions that made her pause and reflect. What specifically feels inauthentic when you try to write about your experiences? Is it the words themselves, or something about the context of sharing online? Maya found herself typing a long response, explaining her fears about commodifying the sacred, about reducing profound experiences to content, about losing the transmission that happens in presence. The AI's next response was even more surprising. It sounds like you're concerned about the difference between sharing wisdom and performing wisdom. What would it look like to share online the same way you share in your meditation classes? This question stopped Maya in her tracks. In her classes, she never planned what she was going to say. She would sit in silence for a few moments, feel into the energy of the group, and then speak from whatever arose naturally. She trusted that the right words would come, and they always did. But online, she had been trying to craft the perfect message, to anticipate every possible reader's needs, to create content that would work for everyone. She had been performing rather than sharing. What if, the AI continued, you approached online sharing the same way you approach teaching in person? What if you trusted that the right words would arise for the people who need to hear them? Maya felt something shift inside her. She had been thinking about AI as a tool to help her write better content. But what if it could be something different? What if it could be a practice partner, helping her stay connected to her authentic voice rather than replacing it? Over the next few weeks, Maya developed a new practice. Before writing anything for her blog or social media, she would have a conversation with the AI about what she was experiencing, what insights were arising, what questions she was sitting with. But instead of asking the AI to write for her, she used it as a sounding board, a way to clarify her own thoughts and feelings. The AI would ask her questions like, what would you say to someone sitting across from you who was struggling with this same issue? Or, how would you explain this concept to a child? Or, what's the simplest way to point to this truth? These questions helped Maya remember that she wasn't trying to impress anyone or prove her spiritual credentials. She was simply sharing what she had learned in the hopes that it might be helpful to someone else walking a similar path. Gradually, her writing began to change. Instead of spiritual jargon and abstract concepts, she found herself using simple, everyday language. Instead of trying to sound enlightened, she shared her struggles and questions alongside her insights. Instead of positioning herself as an expert, she presented herself as a fellow traveler. The AI also helped her with practical aspects of online sharing that had always felt overwhelming. It could suggest ways to structure her thoughts, help her find the right tone for different platforms, and even brainstorm titles that felt authentic rather than clickbait. But most importantly, it helped her remember that sharing her spiritual journey online didn't have to be different from sharing it in person. The medium might be different, but the intention could remain the same: to serve, to connect, to offer whatever small light she had to those who might be walking in darkness. Maya realized that she had been making online sharing much more complicated than it needed to be. She didn't need to become a different person online. She didn't need to master some new skill set. She just needed to be herself, with the same sincerity and care she brought to her in-person teaching. The AI wasn't replacing her wisdom or her voice. It was helping her find them. Practice in stillness. Maya's new practice evolved organically over the following months. Every morning, after her personal meditation, she would sit with her laptop and have what she came to think of as Dharma conversations with the AI. These weren't sessions where she asked the AI to write content for her. Instead, they were explorations, dialogues that helped her process her own insights and find ways to share them authentically. She might start by describing a moment from her meditation. This morning, I had this experience of feeling completely held by the universe, like I was a child being rocked to sleep by a cosmic mother. But when I try to write about it, It sounds either too woo-woo or too sentimental. How do I share something like this? The AI would respond with questions that helped her dig deeper. What was the felt sense of that experience? What did it teach you about trust or surrender? How might someone who's never had that exact experience still relate to the underlying truth you discovered? Through these conversations, Maya learned to translate her experiences not by dumbing them down, but by finding the universal human elements within them. The Cosmic Mother became a reflection on what it means to feel truly supported. The sense of being held became an exploration of how we can learn to trust life even when we can't control it. She also discovered that the AI was particularly good at helping her notice when she was slipping into spiritual bypassing or using concepts to avoid deeper truths. When she would write something like, "We just need to trust the universe," the AI might ask, "What does trust actually look like when you're facing a real challenge?" What would you say to someone who's struggling to pay rent or dealing with a serious illness? These questions pushed Maya to ground her insights in real human experience, to acknowledge the complexity of spiritual practice in the midst of ordinary life challenges. The AI also helped her develop what she called honest transparency. Instead of pretending to have everything figured out, she learned to share her ongoing questions and struggles alongside her insights. When she wrote about forgiveness, she would also mention the relationship she was still learning to forgive. When she shared teachings on presence, she would acknowledge the moments when her own mind was scattered and reactive. This honesty transformed her online presence. Instead of sounding like another perfect spiritual teacher dispensing wisdom from on high, she sounded like a real person sharing what she was learning along the way. Her followers began to engage more deeply, sharing their own struggles and insights in the comments. Maya also discovered that the AI could help her with the technical aspects of online sharing that had always felt overwhelming. It could suggest hashtags that felt authentic rather than manipulative, help her write email newsletters that maintained the intimate tone of her in-person teaching, and even brainstorm ways to structure online courses that preserve the organic, responsive quality of her live classes. But perhaps most importantly, the AI helped her develop a sustainable practice of sharing. Instead of the feast or famine cycle she had experienced before, where she would either post nothing for months or exhaust herself trying to create daily content, she found a rhythm that felt natural and nourishing. She would share when she had something genuine to offer, not because a content calendar told her to. She would write from inspiration rather than obligation. And she would trust that the right people would find her content at the right time, rather than trying to optimize for maximum reach. The AI became like a spiritual director for her online practice, helping her stay connected to her deeper intentions and authentic voice. It reminded her that the goal wasn't to build a massive following or become a spiritual influencer, but to serve whoever was meant to receive her particular gifts. Over time, Maya's online community grew organically, not because she was following marketing strategies or growth hacks, but because she was sharing authentically and consistently from her heart. People could sense the difference between content created for engagement and wisdom shared from genuine care. Her Thursday night meditation class also grew, as people who had discovered her online sought out the deeper experience of practicing together in person. The digital and the sacred had found a way to support each other rather than compete. Echoing question. 6 months after that first tentative conversation with the AI, Maya sat in her expanded meditation space. She had moved from the community center to a beautiful studio that could accommodate the 30 people who now came regularly to practice with her. As she looked around at the faces of her students, some who had found her through her original 12-person circle, others who had discovered her through her online sharing, she marveled at how much had changed. Her online presence had grown to include a blog that thousands of people read, a newsletter that felt like letters to dear friends, and social media posts that sparked meaningful conversations about the real challenges of spiritual practice. She had even launched an online course, but one that felt more like an extended Dharma conversation than a traditional program. The AI had become an integral part of her practice, but not in the way she had initially feared. It hadn't replaced her wisdom or made her sharing feel artificial. Instead, it had helped her become more herself online, more honest, more vulnerable, more real. She thought about all the spiritual teachers and practitioners she knew who were still struggling with the same dilemma she had faced, wanting to share their gifts with the world, but feeling paralyzed by the apparent conflict between authenticity and online presence. What would she tell them now? What had she learned that might help them find their own way of bridging the sacred and the digital? First, that the technology itself wasn't the problem. AI, like any tool, could be used in service of ego or in service of truth. The key was in the intention and the approach. When she used AI to help her sound more impressive or to generate content for the sake of content, it felt hollow. When she used it to help her clarify her own thoughts and share more authentically, it felt like a genuine support. Second, that online sharing didn't have to be different from in-person sharing in its essence. The medium might be different, but the heart could remain the same. The question wasn't how to become a different person online, but how to be the same person in a different context. Third, that authenticity online wasn't about being perfect or having all the answers. It was about being honest about the journey, sharing both the insights and the struggles, the clarity and the confusion. People were hungry for real spiritual guidance, not spiritual performance. But perhaps most importantly, she had learned that the sacred could not be diminished by technology. It could only be diminished by our own fear and lack of trust. When she approached online sharing with the same reverence and care she brought to her in-person teaching, the sacred remained intact. The question that had once paralyzed her, how to maintain spiritual integrity in the digital world, had transformed into a practice of its own. Maya's story is not unique. All around the world, spiritual teachers, coaches, and practitioners are discovering that AI can be a powerful ally in sharing their gifts authentically online, not as a replacement for their wisdom, but as a tool for clarifying and expressing it. The key is in the approach. When we use AI to help us sound like someone else or to generate content for the sake of content, we lose our authentic voice. But when we use it as a practice partner, a sounding board, a way to stay connected to our deeper intentions, it can actually help us become more ourselves. If you're someone who has been called to share your spiritual journey online, but has felt stuck between authenticity and digital presence, know that you're not alone. And know that there is a way forward that honors both your integrity and your calling to serve. The path Maya discovered, using AI as an honest assistant rather than a replacement for wisdom, is available to anyone willing to approach it with sincerity and care. It's not about learning new marketing strategies or becoming a different person online. It's about finding ways to be more yourself, more honest, more vulnerable, more real. Your wisdom is needed in this world. Your particular way of seeing, your unique insights, your authentic voice. These are gifts that only you can offer. Don't let fear of technology or confusion about online sharing keep you from answering the call to serve. The sacred and the digital can coexist. In fact, they can support each other in beautiful ways. The question is not whether you should share your spiritual journey online, but how you can do so in a way that honors both your truth and your calling. The world is waiting for your light. Let AI help you shine it more brightly.